Today, I'm going to be talking to you guys about my personal story with my family and a couple of the things that I went through. I would say that it all started when I was around 0 to 7 years old. Around that time, I remember feeling very loved, very seen, and like all the attention was on me. But my dad did struggle with alcohol abuse, and so I just remember that my parents would get into a lot of arguments because of my dad's drinking habits. My dad would drink a lot, and because of that, it would make him angry. So my father would, I didn't really see this growing up, it was more my sister, but my father would punch walls. He would be very angry, and then he would storm out of the house whenever he was set off by my mom or triggered by my mom. He eventually got into recovery a couple years later, but that's what I remember from when I was 0 to 7. Around this time, I was seeing things, but I still generally felt loved and seen. From the ages of 8 to 9 is when I started to experience a lot of aggression from my mother. I'm not sure why. Maybe it was because she was dealing with her own personal issues with my dad, but I just remember that my mother was always very angry, or when I would do something to upset her, I was met with a lot of anger. And so around the time I was 8 to 9, I started to have suicidal thoughts due to one specific occasion that I will get to right now. But when I was 8 to 9, I had my first suicidal thought, and that's really heavy and it's a lot, but I would like to explain to you how that happened. So I remember certain occasions. That's where I'll start. When I was younger, my mother wouldn't really feed my dog. I had this dog named Teddy, and I loved that dog, but my mom would go like days without feeding him, like 1 day or 2 days, and I would watch that, and it would really affect me because I loved my dog. And so sometimes I would sneak my dog food, and there was one specific occasion where an entire thing of bologna went missing, and I was called downstairs by my mom, like yelling, and she told me, like, I know you gave it to him. She was just so angry, and I hadn't even done anything. I had not given my dog the bologna, but she was very, very aggressive with me, claiming that I had given my dog the bologna when I had not. And so eventually, after she was done yelling, she ended up finding it. But seeing my dog not get fed, it was just really hard for me. And then the aggression that I was met with as well. Another occasion, same story. I was talking about my dog, and I was probably around 8 or 9. I was telling my mom about how, I think it was about how much I loved the dog and how I had plans to do something with him. But after I said that, she looked at me and she told me, he's gonna die anyways, with like a smile on her face, like a grin. And it just crushed my heart because I really loved my dog. And at a young age, I was already being met with a lot of aggression, a lot of things that shouldn't have been said to a child. And so it really started to affect me. I'd also get picked on a lot by my mother. I remember being called retarded by her, or when I would make a mistake or not do something, a family member, maybe they would call me retarded, and I would look toward my mother to defend me, but she wouldn't. She would just laugh and just blow it off and just laugh at me. I remember that I'd get laughed at a lot. I'd get teased a lot. For example, on one occasion, my sister was graduating, and my mom told me, go pick out shoes for her. Go bring shoes for her graduation, because my sister didn't have the right shoes and she was already at graduation. And I remember I picked out probably like 2 pairs of shoes and I brought them to my mom. And they were nice shoes. They were fair. I think they were like flats, one of them, and another pair was heels. And my mom looked at me and she told me, what, are you on marijuana? While she was talking to my father on the phone. She looked at me and she was like, what, are you on marijuana? Because she didn't like the shoes that I chose. And it was just so much aggression that it would hurt my little heart, you know. It really did hurt me. And so I broke down crying, and I remember I got in the back seat and I was crying, and all my mom did was, here, eat this and stop crying. Very aggressive, not comforting. And it's just a story that I remember, and why I think that it built up to me eventually having a suicidal thought when I was 8 or 9. I think by the stories you can kind of get a picture of what I would experience during that time. And so there was a point where I wanted to talk to a counselor about what I was experiencing. And this is where kind of it all started. So I almost went to the counselor's office. I think I was in 3rd grade. And I got home and I told my mom, hey, I almost talked to the counselor because I think that's what I said, because of you, and I just feel like you're very mean, or something like that, something along those lines. I can't really remember. And she got very, very angry. She didn't ask me, hey, let's talk about it, what's going on. She got very angry. She grabbed my iPod and she smashed it in front of my face. And I was so scared, and I was like, oh man, I shouldn't have said anything. When my dad got home, he told me, let's go on a drive. And I remember getting in the car and I just felt so ashamed, sad. He pulled up to like this park area, or just in the neighborhood he parked, and he looked at me and he told me, your mom does love you. And I just broke down crying. And he just embraced me. And that's what I remember from that experience. I just felt very isolated. I felt very alone. And I felt like I didn't really have anyone to go to. My father was always working. He would work all day in the mornings, come home for dinner, and then go back to work. And then I wouldn't see him. I just remember the teasing and the laughing at me and the name calling and the aggression. And by the time I was 8 or 9, it was just a lot for me, genuinely. I internalized a lot of their words, a lot of the words that they would tell me and how they would treat me. And by this point, I started talking to my parents about therapy. I didn't necessarily say, oh, I want to go to therapy because you are hurting me and you're not taking accountability for it, you're not apologizing, or you just can't meet me emotionally. I didn't know how to put it into words back then. But if I could go back, I would probably tell them, hey, could I go to therapy because I have a lot of things that I'm dealing with inside and I need someone to help me process them emotionally. And so when I was around, again, 8 or 9, I brought up the topic of therapy, but I would get dismissed a lot. They would just tell me like, no, you don't need it, or no. So I would tell them like, you know what, I need therapy. I want to go. I want to talk to someone. And I remember my mom saying no. And then I heard her talking to my father and saying, they're going to turn her against us if we let her go. And so I would spend just a lot of time in my room, isolated, you know, trying to pass the time. I would play on my tablet, watch a lot of videos, but I was very, very lonely. And I wanted someone to sit down with me and talk to me and tell me, hey, you know what? Let's talk about what you're feeling, rather than making me feel as if my feelings didn't matter and me having to learn how to deal with all those emotions by myself. It was just so much for me, and I would cry a lot. And so now let's talk about when I had suicidal thoughts. And so after all of that, I started seeking comfort in romantic relationships. At a young age, I started dating. I had my first boyfriend when I was in 3rd grade. And I was just seeking that love and that comfort. Again, we had spoken about limerence in the last video. And so I was seeking that comfort. And so I dated this little boy when I was in 3rd grade. And it was just over the summer. Nothing really happened. But I would text him, like, hey, like, what's up? And my parents ended up finding out about that. I remember I woke up one morning and my iPod was gone. I instantly felt my stomach drop because I knew that my mom had my phone, because she would go through it a lot. I went downstairs. My mom was there and she was like, we know what you're doing. We know what you have been doing. And I just started bursting into tears. And I just felt so much shame, so much guilt. And yeah, she looked at me and she said, she looked at me and she said, I know what you've been doing. Just with so much anger. And I felt terrible. And so by then, she told my father. My father was gonna come home after work and talk with me. But I was met with a lot of aggression again. And so I went to my room. And that's when I decided, you know what, I didn't have the words for it back then, but as an adult, I know what I was feeling. I just felt very unloved and unseen. And so I said, you know what, I'm gonna end my life. So I wrote letters to my sister, to my parents, about, I guess, why I was doing it. I don't really remember what I wrote, but I believe that it was why I was doing it, and probably that I loved them. I went to my father's cabinet and I got a pill. This was like my idea of what it was like to commit. And so I took one and I thought it was gonna do something. I will say that I did bleed internally a little bit. Like when I used the bathroom, I saw there was a little bit of blood. But right after, I instantly regretted it, and I was like, man, what did I do? I shouldn't have done this. So I had like this fear that I was going to pass away, but I prayed and I just hoped for the best. Now, looking back, that's not going to do much. Maybe it'll cause some issues, but it won't take you. But I just wanted to leave the earth, to be honest. I didn't want to be here anymore because I just felt so much pain and just a lack of love in my heart. Sometime after, I told my sister, you know what, I tried to end my life, and I was making a joke about it, but my sister, she was older than me, and so she took it very seriously, and she told my mother, because it was serious. She told my mother, and my mom didn't say anything. She didn't do anything. She just looked at me, and then she told my father. My father told me let's go upstairs. He sat with me. He talked to me, and he started crying, and he said, do you know what that does to me? And I started crying, and I told him I'm sorry. And then he went to the bathroom. He wiped his tears, and after that, I think he gave me a hug. And then I went to my room and I went to sleep, and that was the day. I never really truly received comfort. I wasn't never really asked what was going on, but I was just seen as like a problem child, honestly. I was seen as a problem. And yeah, I mean, I almost lost my life. I mean, I attempted, but my mother, she didn't comfort me, really. She just looked at me She didn't really cry. And then sometime after that, I brought it up again and I said, you know what? I did it not because of the guy, because my mom was, she would always say, oh my gosh, she tried to end her life over a guy. Like, what is that? Or how stupid is that? And she would, that's the story that she had. But the real truth was that I just felt very, very unloved. And I think you can see why through like the little stories that I share. So when I brought it up again and I told her that's not why, and I was young, probably around 10, I told her that wasn't why. I felt so unloved. I felt like you didn't see me or that you didn't care about me. And she would just ignore me. She wouldn't listen to me. She would scroll on her phone and be like, okay, whatever, just sorry, just go. And I remember I was just so heartbroken, and I was being vulnerable with them because I struggled with vulnerability, because I'd get made fun of, or I'd get laughed at, or I'd get pushed aside, or they wouldn't listen to me. And so I'd get pushed aside. And I remember my dad looked at me and he was like, you know what, just let it go. Yeah, it's in the past. So I walked away with a heavy heart and tears in my eyes, just in a lot of pain, because I wasn't seen. And it's like I was treated like I was nothing, or like my life was not worth anything. I wish my mom would have hugged me. I wish she would have told me, I love you. I'm so sorry for all the aggression. It's not you. I'm just projecting it onto you because I have my own issues. That's what I wish I would have heard. I wish I would have had gentleness and kindness. After that, I just felt very unseen, and so I would process all my emotions by myself, but I would process every heavy emotion alone, whether it was anger, sadness, and I started to experience depression from the ages of 12 to 15. I remember that I was just very depressed. I would have a very messy room, clothing all over the floor. I would sleep very, very late. I would just stay up playing games and just trying to numb my feelings, but when it got dark, that's when all the negative emotions would come in. And I didn't know how to process them. I was handling them all alone. And so I started binge eating to help with the pain. I remember I would just eat so much, and I had these great feelings of sadness, and I didn't know why. Well, I did know why, but a lot of them I just carried a lot of sadness in my heart. And so I would struggle to sleep. I would cry myself to sleep. And I would research, why doesn't my mom love me? I would go on those Reddit forums and just try to figure out what I could do to gain more love, or how could I change for my mom to love me more. And so that's where I was. And so I entered middle school, and I was eating, I wasn't really sleeping, I would stay up crying. But around this time, I started to express myself more. I was open, and I told them, you know what, I'm so sad. I'm so sad, and I have no idea why. And I remember that my dad would tell me, you have nothing to be sad about. I give you everything. All your physical needs are met. What else do you need? You have a bed to sleep in, a house to live in. What else do you need? And so I would listen to him, but it wouldn't help how I was feeling. And he told me, you think you have real problems? You don't have real problems. Wait until you grow up and you actually experience adult issues. And so my feelings were always pushed aside. And I remember I would come to my mom, because dad's not really helping. He's more of the stronger figure, right? So I came to my mom, and I told her one day, I just feel so sad, and I don't know why. And she looked at me, and she told me, stop talking about it because you're gonna make your brother sad. And so I went into the hallway, and I was just sitting there, and I started crying. I was looking at just pictures of when I was younger, trying to get my mind off of it, but I was near my mother's room. I was like, this is my mother's room. I'm right here, looking through the pictures, crying because I'm trying to self-soothe. And my mom, she just looked at me with so much anger, and she slammed the door in my face. And so I was just, again, met with a lot of anger. So, again, I would isolate a lot. I just go back into my room, deal with it by myself, come down for dinner, go back into my room, and just spend time with myself. But it was just very dark. And so I turned to relationships. I was dating a lot in middle school, dating guys that I didn't even like, just to feel love. I was pretty much, from when I was 7 to middle school, I was just told that I was really sensitive. My cries for help were ignored, and I dealt with a lot of things by myself. And so, COVID happens, high school rolls around. I'm just doing my work. I enrolled into a college program, high school college program, so most of my time I would just study. And from a young age, my parents told me, whatever you want to do, scratch that. I wanted to be a marine biologist, but they told me, whatever you want to do, scratch that. Do something great. Be a doctor, be an engineer, do that. And so at 14, I was like, okay, I'm going to be a doctor. And so I would study so hard because that was the only way that I feel like I would gain approval from them. And so I would study really hard. I would lose sleep. I was just really going at it. And this is a picture during that time. I wouldn't really take care of myself, and I was withering away. I would just work, and that's all I would do. And so by the time I got into high school, my dad ended up getting cancer. And so all the attention, everything went to my father, and it was a really hard time for me, Despite everything that my parents did, I still loved them a lot. And so this time just called for us to unite and be there for my dad. But yeah, my dad had cancer from the ages of 14, from when I was 14 to probably like 17, 18. But even then, we were all grieving for my father. But after my dad started recovering, because he went into remission and then he would get cancer. He got cancer like 4 times, 3 to 4 times. But I was still met with aggression on certain days. I would get laughed at a lot whenever I would express myself. I just felt like I lived with a bully, It felt like I lived with a bully. And so I was still kind of struggling with feelings of sadness, but that's when I found my friends, and I was really involved in school, and so I would spend most of my time doing that. But when I'd get home, I would stay home all the time. I was very isolated. I wouldn't really go out. I had to ask for permission, and most of the times it was just no. So I would just, stay at home. I kind of felt like Tangled, that movie. I was just always home, finding things to do. But I remember even in high school, this is a very important story to me because it still shows where my parents were emotionally in high school, despite my dad going through cancer. So I was part of the school's officer team, like president, secretary, vice president, all that. And my second year of being in that team, there was this guy, and he was part of our team. So he would work closely with us, and unfortunately, he passed away. He ended up crashing his car one day on his way to school, and he passed away. It was really hard on me and everybody at the school. I had never experienced death up to that point. So yeah, it was a lot for me, especially since he was part of our team. You know, everybody loved him. He was so intelligent and just a joy to be around. And so I remember I came home probably like a couple days after, or a week, and my mom was playing the video of them finding him, of the news broadcast of his crash. And I was sitting at the dinner table, and it was still a sensitive topic, so I told my mom, you know what, like, can you turn that off? It's just reminding me, and I just feel very sad. Can you please turn it off? And my dad looked at me and he told me, get over it. You need to let it go. And my mom, she kept playing the video. She didn't stop it, and she looked at me. She gave me like a smile, like a grin, as if I was ridiculous or as if my feelings didn't matter. It was very insidious. It's one of the moments that I remember that I haven't forgotten. She looked at me, she smiled at me, and she kept playing it. And that was just so hard for me, because it felt like my emotions were weaponized and used against me. It was actual emotional abuse and psychological abuse. And the smile, for a while, her smile and her laugh would trigger me a lot. So that was one of the most important memories that I remember regarding what happened, because it really shows where their hearts were at and what I was experiencing. Another moment, my mom would like to make me angry. One day I was sitting at the dinner table and my mom kept poking me, like making me angry, aggravating me. And I told her, stop, please, stop. And my sister looked at her and told her, stop, please. And she looked at my sister and she smiled, and she was looking at me and she said, I like to make her mad. So feelings were often weaponized. And, you know, I was very isolated. I wouldn't go out much. And so that was also another thing that took a toll on me. Not just the emotional aggression, but the isolation that I experienced. I would tell her, I want to go out, I want to do things, I want to go on a walk. I didn't go on my first walk alone till I was around 17 years old. I wanted to bike ride, I wanted to go out, I wanted to skateboard, but she would just tell me, like, no, not until I can go, you can go. So it was only when she could go, which was like not very often, just when they wanted to. And so I had a lot of anger also because of that. My dad was very controlling over my mom. He wouldn't allow her to really work. He would decide what she wore, and he was emotionally neglectful and a bit abusive to my mom as well. So it was just projections and just the household that I lived in. But it poured onto me, you know. I wasn't allowed to do much growing up. I was always inside, isolated, dealing with all these heavy emotions. Yeah, I remember also, like, me and my sister, we would tell our parents, like, please do better, be better parents for us, try to learn about us and be gentle with us and kind, read parenting books. I know that's a lot to say when you're young, but we did tell her that. And then she would pretend like she would say, like, you know what, okay. And then she would laugh and she would say, yeah, right, like, what are you thinking? I'm not. And so it was just very aggressive, very cold to the heart. And so it did affect me. So yeah, my dad had cancer all throughout high school. I was very isolated and still experiencing that emotional neglect. And so yeah, I would be told that I'm very sensitive, that I'm just need to get over it, let go of things. And then my senior year, it took a really big toll on me. You know, I was a good kid. I was the picture perfect kid. I would get the best grades. I would overachieve. But I was a pretty good kid. But something happened as well. It's very important to my story. I was top 10 all throughout freshman year, sophomore year, and junior year. But by the end of junior year, my dad went to the hospital that summer because his lungs collapsed. And my mom, my sister, everybody, we didn't know what to do, and my father was in a coma. So I would take care of my little brother during that time. And so my mom would go to the hospital almost probably like for like the summer, probably like 2 weeks straight, where my mom would go visit my father. And then after that was recovery. So my father was slowly recovering, but my mom would go to the hospital. She would stay there overnight with my dad, and so I would take care of my brother. And during that time, I was taking chemistry too during the summer. I liked to push myself academically, and I thought I could do it, but it was so hard. Not only the class, but also, taking care of my brother and just all the emotions that I was experiencing because I thought my dad was gonna die. And so I ended up getting a C in the class, which I thought was the worst thing ever. But looking back, I can't believe that I was so resilient, so strong, and that I actually got a C in the class, because I'd gotten a B in Chem 1, and it was a college class, Chem 2, for a college credit. Man, I can't believe I got a C, but at the time I was just so hard on myself. I started to feel again sad because all my worth was my grades, genuinely. And so when my parents found out, at first I was met with like, okay, neutrality. Like, okay, it is what it is. You're not top 10 anymore. I ended up being number 14 or 15 because of it. And all of senior year, I completed my associate's degree. And senior year, I took an engineering course at my local university to try to increase my GPA, as well as taking other high school classes. But my goal was just to raise my grade up. But yeah, during that time that happened, and once my dad was like recovered senior year, once in remission, and it was graduation time, and my parents were just so disappointed in me. All of graduation, when I walked the stage, I graduated in black instead of white. And I mean, they showed up and they were there, but it's like they didn't really want to be there, They were very disappointed, and I feel like they were also ashamed. And so for almost an entire, 6 months leading up to graduation, my parents would tell me, look at you, look at what you did, all of the missed opportunities, it's all on you. You weren't serious about your grades, and now look at you. And so again, met with a lot of aggression when I was just trying my best. And I'd get compared a lot to my best friend because we were both top 10, and she's very intelligent. I still love her to this day. I still keep in contact with her. But I remember my parents would compare me so much, and it would honestly hurt me so much. If I could explain to you how I felt, I had already felt heartbroken because I lost my top 10 spot. But on top of that, to be put down by my own family members, especially when I was going through a hard time, and they know what it was like. I mean, my mom was unstable. She would cry a lot because of my dad, and I was there for her. I was there for my brother. College rolls around. I decide I don't want to enroll in my local university, and I want to go out of state for college. Out of the city. I didn't end up going. I think I needed $5,000 in tuition, and I was going to get a loan, but my parents told me, you're not going. And so that was, again, another heartbreak. I had a really big scholarship lined up for me, and I couldn't go, so I said, you know what, fine, I'm not going, because they told me, you're not going. Also, my dog's licking me. My dog never licks me. So they told me, you're not going. And so I didn't end up going. I went through another, depression. It was really hard on me because I put all my eggs in that basket, and I worked so hard all 4 years. And so there were, probably a week, I didn't want to eat. I was just so depressed, and my parents, they didn't comfort me. They just said, you brought this upon yourself. This is your doing. This is your fault for not taking advantage of the opportunities that you have here. And so I was really sad, but it was what I was used to growing up. So I just started working, And then the university called me back and they told me, we can save your scholarship for next semester. Oh my gosh. I said yes. I was so happy, but my parents were still telling me, you're not going. But I told them, I'm going, forcefully. Even if I have to take a train, even if I have to get on a plane, I'm going. And that's when they loosened their grip on me a little bit and said, okay, fine. And I that same time, well, after I graduated and I didn't go to college, my parents didn't teach me how to drive because, you know, my dad was going through the treatments. They didn't have time. So when I was 18, I started taking driving lessons, and I got my license in like 4 to 5 months. And then I went off to college, and yeah, I didn't look back. I found a community over there that I love, that sees me. And then I came back for a year because I was having some like health issues. I came back because I was struggling with excessive sweating. I think it was like a nervous system problem. I think it might have been because of all the stress, and so my nervous system is constantly, I guess, in fight or flight. So I came back to go to the doctors here in my hometown and heal it. But being back brought back a lot of memories, and my relationship with my mom has gotten better. You know, she has grown, but I still would experience things that I remembered from my childhood. For example, being back, the things that I've experienced, I went through a depression, honestly, being back, and there were certain things that my parents would do that would hurt me. I'm just gonna explain a little bit. My mom and I still don't have the best relationship, and it's still rocky. I like to think it's because it's a generational thing, because my grandmother didn't like women. She only preferred boys, and it kind of bled out into the relationship that I have with my mom. And I remember recently, I think I did something that my mom didn't like, or I was just not in the best mood. You could tell by my just energy. And I heard her say, you know what, kids are so difficult sometimes. And I was the only one in the house and it was me, but I heard her say, you know, they're so difficult sometimes. No wonder why some parents choose their animals over their own kids. And she calls my cat her daughter. So that hurt me a lot. And before I went off to college, she said something so hurtful that I haven't forgotten. I've forgiven her, and for that reason you know what, I will say it. But I don't hold any anger towards her anymore because she apologized about it. But she told me, if you go, you're not going to be my daughter anymore, in anger. And I just blew it off because I just blew it off. And yeah, so that was one of the last things that I heard before coming back. And now that I'm back, it's still rocky. You know, like that comment about the animals. And there's still so much more that I didn't say. And with my father, I've just been experiencing a lot of, you know, emotional abuse. Whenever I bring up something that maybe he does that hurt my feelings, or emotional neglect, he will say, he will not take accountability. He will turn it around and blame it on me. And so every time I express an emotion, he'll either maybe laugh, roll his eyes, or joke and be like, just get over it, let it go. And it's the same thing he does with my mom. And that's been something that's been really challenging. You know, I understand that I have gone through these things, but seeing it done on my own mother, it's something that I hate to see, because my father is like that with my mom. And my voice is going really deep, but I don't know why. I think I need water, but I hate to see that, and it hurts my heart. And so now that's where I'm at, and I'm understanding, you know, I am grieving everything that I went through. In my last video, I talked about the grief that I feel and how I'm approaching acceptance. But this is my story. This is what I experienced, and I just hope that it helps someone, because I've never really shared my story in its entirety. And so today marks the day that I do. And today is a very important day for me, because today marks the day where I will begin pouring love back into myself, being there for myself, being the parent that I always needed, trusting in God to fill my heart, trusting in a new life, and deciding that I will be myself wholeheartedly. Because when you go through things like that, isolation and emotional abuse, you begin to lack identity. I remember in high school, I didn't have any hobbies. I didn't know what I liked. I didn't know myself. I didn't have a strong relationship with myself. But now I'm building that, and it's one of the greatest things that I've ever gone through. Building a relationship with myself, giving myself that love that I so desperately deserved. It's the best journey that I've ever been on. And honestly, it's coming home back to myself. I'm coming back home to myself and reclaiming my power, reclaiming my identity, and never letting anyone make me feel small or unseen ever again. Because I will always see myself, and God will always see me. Mother Nature, the earth, all of its love will encapsulate me. I'll never be alone again. I'll never have to deal with such strong emotions alone ever again. So yes, this is my story, almost like a gift to myself, because I've never given myself the opportunity to be open and honest about what I've been through. So thank you for listening, and on to light and love and life, on to better things, because our story, my story, doesn't end here. The page has turned in the book, but it's time for a new chapter, or even a whole new book altogether. So thank you so much for listening. I hope this will help you, and I just thank you for allowing me to be vulnerable in front of you, because this heals me as well. And I will be praying, and I will be praying for your healing too. So thank you for listening. I just feel so seen right now, and on to life, on to better things, on to the new chapter, and on to forgiveness and acceptance.